welcome back to the Howler podcast. I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Mary.
Welcome to our March episode. It's Women's History Month, so congrats to both Mary and I because we are women.
Celebrating women everywhere.
Everywhere. I am really excited. Our Pack Unity Alliance Women Transforming Tech always does a really great job in March of bringing fun events, bringing everyone together. They always have so many webinars where we're learning, we're growing, but then we have social events where we're getting new headshots and
connecting,
sipping cocktails. Yeah, and connecting.
Yeah.
So it's so fun.
Well, and I saw their post about the force multiplier, being force multipliers and amplifying key messages across different alliances. I thought that was really cool. I'm excited to see how that plays out this month.
Same. But as listeners know, we do record these a month in advance. And so it's actually February right now, and we are in the thick of the Winter Olympics, which is, I am a big Olympics girly, love the Olympics, love how sport just brings everyone together.
Tell us why you love it so much. How does it make you feel? Or tell us how you came to love it. What was the first Olympics experience?
Well, I will say for those, I don't know why everyone would know, but I used to work in sports before this. So I worked in professional sports for 10 years. And I do just think that sport in general does just bring people together. It gives everyone a common thing to root for. It is an equalizer. Everyone gets out there and everyone has the opportunity to succeed, to win, to do all the things. And I just love the Olympics because I love being worldly. I like to know about different cultures and different countries. And I love the stories of these people have dedicated their whole lives to this one thing. And especially for a lot of the Winter Olympic sports, they're not as popular. People aren't just watching ice skating every year. There are obviously people that do, but so it's people are working so hard for one shot, or I don't know, they might go to the Olympics 3 times, depending on their age. So it's you only have this stage only a few times in your life. And it's just so exciting. And the little backstories that we get about the athletes, then it makes you want to root for them. And then when they cut to their family, it's just so fun. I don't know. It makes me emotional because I love seeing people's dreams come true. That's the root of it. If I'm watching someone on a stage get a standing ovation, I'm crying. I'm oh my God, their dreams are coming true. I just love watching people achieve things. And so Olympics, they're just achieving their biggest dream.
Yeah, that
it's for. And it's still sport, so you get to root, you get into it. So you're oh, I don't know.
Okay, well, you could probably educate me. Well, I have a comment and then I have a question, but they're related. So,
okay.
And Chelsea knows this, but I spent 20 minutes 2 weeks ago figuring out how to get the Olympics on the TV in my office. And I am now a Peacock subscriber. So, no, not Peacock.
Yeah, Peacock.
That's what it is. I know Peacock is our internal engagement survey. A Peacock subscriber, so I could watch the Olympics. And the other day, the bobsledding was on. And it was one of those emotional, and mind you, I'm watching intermittently and I don't have the sound on. So I'm this, I feel it's not as emotional because the subtitles and without the sound, I'm just not getting it as much. But it caught my attention because the woman, and maybe you know who it is, we can give her credit or give her flowers, but she's a mother and it was her first Olympic gold for bobsledding. But in the scene, she had a really great time, but there was one more bobsledder that went right behind her. So it was that will she be gold or will she be silver based on this person's performance? And the person did really well, but then she comes in and her time is higher than this other woman's. And so then it's the immediate falling on the ground, crying and people hugging, and you could just see the emotion on her face. So I hear you with like all the hard work is culminating in this moment and like how cool. And also like as a mother, like your kids and all the things you've worked hard. But I also was just looking at the sport of bobsledding, and I feel like basketball, volleyball, running, like those are things that we all do. And even
Yeah.
if you're not like a basketball person, like in elementary school, like you just have to play it in gym class. So those sports make sense to me that maybe people would start to rise above the rest. Like, wow, that person is a superstar at basketball. But bobsledding isn't something that the average person would just
You've
do.
never gone bobsledding?
No, and it's so dangerous. Even watching it makes me scared. So I, pardon, I was just thinking when I was watching this, like, that is a sport, maybe. And I don't want to discredit, I think obviously lots of hard work, but it kind of feels like you become great because you have the access, maybe. Like, how do you become a great bobsledder? Do you just say, I want to be one? But how do I
Yeah.
not know that I'm a superstar bobsledder? I just never had
You could
the
be.
opportunity. No one was like, Mary, do you want to try bobsledding?
You
But I
could be.
could be. Like, it's a weird, like, how do you get there? Do you know?
Well, and I will say to your point, a lot of sports are about access. Like hockey is a very expensive sport. Like you
Hmm.
can't just have skates, have the equipment, have ice. You know, like basketball, soccer, these are really accessible sports. A kid can just go outside. You can find a basketball court, you
Yeah.
can like kick around a soccer ball. So like sports is an equalizer in the sense of once you're on the court, everyone has the opportunity to succeed. But there definitely are barriers to sports. But to your point, I think a lot of like I know I follow this skeleton athlete. Well, he's retired now, but he won gold a few years ago. And he was just a track athlete. A lot of like skeleton, bobsled, luge, those are track athletes because they sprint, you know, at the start.
Mhm.
And he was just a high school track athlete. And one day the like national bobsled or skeleton coach like came to school and was like, "You look athletic. Do you want to try skeleton?" And he was like, Sure, I don't know."
Is
And then
skeleton
like
the one where you
5 years
lay not in
later,
a car and you're head first or you're laying on your back? Which one is skeleton?
skeleton is you're on your stomach head first.
See, and again, the first time you do that, it's like, hey, by the way, you could be paralyzed. You're going to go 70 miles per hour head first.
Okay, well you ease into they have like training tracks. Like you're not just immediately going on the track. Like you start like anything you start. Like you first start, you learn
Sure.
how to jump on it. And they have tracks where it's literally just like you go down and up and that's it. You know, it's just like a straight line and you're just
Okay.
practicing getting on the sled. And you know what I mean? You're not just like immediately going to an Olympic style
Yeah, for sure.
track.
It looks so
But
dangerous.
anyway, so a lot of those types of sledding athletes are multi Olympic sport athletes. Like some people are summer track Olympians and then they're winter
Mm.
sledding Olympians. But yeah, I think a lot of those sports, you just kind of you have to have someone be like, "Oh, you're athletic. Do you want to try this?" Um, because yeah, I mean, my cousin went to the Junior Olympics for ski jumping, and I'm always like, "How do you get into ski jumping?" You know,
Mm.
like that's why would I just like jump off a huge? I don't know. That's wild. And he
Again.
was like, "Well, I used to go skiing every weekend up in up at Buck Hill or whatever the place is here in Minnesota." And he was like, one day someone was like, "Hey, have you ever tried ski jumping?" And he said, "No." And then, you know, then he ski jumped for like 10 years. So it just takes one person to, like you always say, it just takes one person to see the potential in you and to
Mhm.
like cultivate that. So,
I feel like a lot of really powerful themes here of access, believing in people and your dreams, the
yeah.
combination of hard work for the couple seconds of glory. Because that's another thing. Like we see these
Right.
moments and it's like we don't see the hours and years of training and sacrifice.
Yes. And a lot of these athletes are not making money. Like,
Mhm.
you know, they're not in lucrative. If you're not a major sport athlete in the US, as in like one of the major leagues, like you're not making money, you know?
Mhm.
Some of these people have regular 9 to 5s and then train, like
Yeah, for
take time
sure.
off to train. So it is wild. It's just so inspiring to me that people, the things that we can accomplish if we set our mind to it, you know?
Yeah. Well, is your cup so full as we end the 2
I love
weeks?
it. Well, I hope all of those that watched the Olympics felt inspired, a great reminder that we're all humans in this world, regardless of what country we come from. And it's just like so special to bring everyone together during a time like there's just so much going on in the world. So it's nice to just come together and find some joy, you know?
Well said, Chelsea. If
All right. Well,
if you're listening and you're an Olympics fan, you can Slack Chelsea about your
yes,
favorite stories or any of that stuff. So,
yes.
Okay, well, shall we?
Yeah, speaking of worldly, we do have someone not from the US on the podcast today.
Yes, we do. Today, we're joined by Tom Rogers. Tom brings a decade of cybersecurity leadership, including time at Rapid7, where he drove more than 40% growth in marketing's pipeline impact and built a top-tier customer reference program. Before that, he held key marketing roles at Immersive, Trustwave, and Sophos, shaping global strategies across the security landscape. Tom is now helping Arctic Wolf advance its mission to end cyber risk and strengthen a culture grounded in unity and impact.
All right. Welcome to the podcast, Tom. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so fun. So I've had a chance to meet Tom multiple times because I got to do your onboarding. And then even though you are based in Boston, I would say you half live in Minnesota at this point. I feel like I see you every other week. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are not incorrect. Uber actually thinks I live in Minnesota. So when I get to Minnesota now, it says welcome home. And when I get to Boston, it says have a nice trip, which is an ongoing joke for everybody in the office there.
Oh my gosh. Wait, that's actually wild.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Okay, but Mary hasn't had a chance to meet you yet.
So I didn't realize you were British, maybe.
That is correct. Yes. Britain, just outside of London, is home originally, but I'm at the point now where I've spent more of my life post 21 outside of the UK than inside of the UK. So I don't quite know what that classifies me as right now.
Citizen of the world.
Maybe. Oh, Canada and the US for sure. That's where the majority of the time has been.
Well, I think as long as you've got the British accent, you're not going to be able to claim you're not British, you know?
That's true. I've just about got mine still, although I've learned over time that this is a little bit like mixing paint, right? So people think I'm Australian quite a lot of the time. So I guess like British and North American equals Australian. My kids were 6 and 1.5 when we moved to Boston. So they full on sound like they're out of a Mark Wahlberg movie at this point, which is very confusing whenever we go to the airport because they're like, are these guys with you or how does that work? So
wait, I kind of think it would be fun if they had a little British and Boston accent. That's a combo that would be interesting.
Well, my eldest does that when he's with me and his mom. He's 13 now, so he's 14 in a couple of months. But when he's with me and his mom, he fully sounds like he's, from the UK. And then as soon as he's engaging with any of his friends or anybody that's not from the UK, it's full thick Boston accent.
Really? So he's like
very, very odd. Yeah. Doesn't like to talk about it, so we don't mention it. But he's got definitely got two distinct set of vocal characteristics.
Wow.
What about the lingo, if you will? When Claire Leverage, our general manager in Europe, was on the podcast, and this is like a couple of years ago now, but she gave Chelsea and I the basics, like rubbish and rubbish and
I don't even remember
them now, but something about like apple in a day. Anyways,
yeah, right.
That's the lingo. Do you still use like British slang?
When I'm at home, I do. Although I'm very interchangeable. So generally, when I'm at home, I'm pretty much fully Americanized in my lingo, I suppose. But I do flip between the two. So I will go like car trunk, car boot interchangeably, rubbish and garbage interchangeably. I still swear mostly in British. So if I swear, that comes through with like a full British accent. And I think it has I don't know, I can probably get away with it a little more with a full British accent. But I'm pretty interchangeable.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Well, before you joined us, Mary and I, during our intro, we were talking about the Olympics
Yeah.
because it's Olympics right now. So when you, one, do you watch the Olympics? And two, are you rooting for England, or like where are your allegiance? Where does your allegiance lie?
Oh, Chelsea, such a tough question. So I do. I love the Olympics. It's it's summer or winter, but the winter one is fun. It's once every
Yes.
4 years you can get invested in curling and ski
Right.
jumping, right? And actually like care. I would tell you my affiliations lie in multiple places. So I guess the heart is always with the Brits, right? And
Mhm.
not a lot we're great at in the Winter Olympics, to be super transparent. So I feel obligated when we do actually have a chance to compete in something. I sort of
Mm.
have to defer back to that. Um, Certainly, some of the US athletes, I guess, are good to watch. And I was watching one of the speed skaters yesterday, who seemed like great, and so obviously want to do for them to do well. I guess the contentious one, if there was a contentious one, would be the ice hockey, and I tend to root for the Canadians there. I spent
Ooh.
9 years living in Vancouver, which was a phenomenal experience, and I think, as most people are aware, like hockey is somewhat sacred north of the border, right? And so, rooting for them, I guess. But hopefully, we get a Canadian US final, which will be a ton of fun to watch. But that may be
Well,
the only one that's slightly contentious for folks in Eden Prairie, but probably gets me some points for the team in Waterloo.
okay, well, we do have a Canadian US final that's happening today, the women's gold
Correct.
medal game.
Women's, yeah,
So are
1:30.
you want the Canadian team, the women's team, to win gold?
Well, if you had to push me, like now I feel like we're getting into dangerous water, Chelsea. That I could
No,
get.
no, no, it's okay. I'm just messing with you.
I
I'm
know
just
you are. I know,
messing
but
with you.
yeah, generally, I was fortunate. I lived in Vancouver when the Winter Olympics were there in 2012, and it was
Cool.
just a phenomenal experience. And just everything that goes around it as well, that I think you don't appreciate when it's not kind of in the city that you're in. But I have a lot of friends still there, a lot of people I still talk to a lot of the time, and so I would be doing them a disservice if I wasn't rooting for them, I guess, in this two-horse race.
Yeah. Okay, well, did you see Sidney Crosby's out now?
Did, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Which actually is sad, but also I don't have him in my hockey pool, so I'm getting over it.
Okay, okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Obviously, I want the US team to win,
Of
but
course,
I'm a big hockey fan, so I follow a lot of
you are.
Canadian players. So, you're like rooting for players, but also teams. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So you a wild supporter, a wild fan.
Well, so actually, I'm from Virginia, so I
Yeah.
grew up a Capitals fan, and
Okay.
I was like a deep, like, I watched every game, huge Capitals fan. And then when I moved to Minnesota, so I worked in sports before this, and I was working in the NBA.
Yep.
And previously, I worked in baseball, so it worked out that like I had the off season to watch hockey.
Yep.
But then once I started working in basketball, it was like during hockey season, I couldn't watch games because I was like working games.
Right. Right.
And so I kind of fell off being a Capitals fan. And then, of course, the first year I wasn't a fan, they won the Stanley Cup.
Always the
I don't
way,
want
right?
to, I don't want to talk about it. And so now it's been a few years. Like I had a little break from being a big hockey fan, and now I'm back in it this like past year. And so it's just easier to be a Wild fan. I feel so disconnected from the
Yeah.
Capitals. Like the team's not even the team that I know anymore. So I've become a Wild fan, which has been fun.
They have a great team this year. I'm
They
still
have
I'm
a great
still getting
team.
over the fact that Vancouver Canucks captain is now a wild.
It has been fun, like watching Quinn play,
Yeah, he's incredible.
like seeing him live
Yeah.
because I did go to a game. On TV, you're like, oh yeah, his skating skills are cool, but then like seeing it live is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, side tangent over. We got to get back to you, and we want to learn more about you and your career and how you ended up at Arctic Wolf. So we love to go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
When little Tom was in the UK, like what did you want to be when you were little? I don't know if you knew about marketing at that point. But kind of take us on a journey from like what you thought you wanted to do and then kind of how you ended up here at Arctic Wolf.
Yeah. So great question. Not dissimilar to any young man growing up, I guess. The original aspiration was to play for England and captain England in soccer or football, I guess. Quickly realized that wasn't, something that was probably going to be likely for me. But grew up playing a lot of sports, loved the team element of it, the competitiveness. And so my original sort of, or I guess growing up, I really had two dreams. One was to be a sports agent. So this was kind of around the time that the film Jerry Maguire came out.
Okay.
I just thought it was a great movie and looked a lot of fun. Didn't realize you needed a law degree probably to do that. And so decided against that one fairly quickly. And then the other thing that I was always fascinated with was aviation. And so a pilot was also something that I thought would be just a really cool thing to do, to get out and see the world and explore and just look like a really interesting thing to do. And so I guess those were the two growing up that I really kind of, wanted to do and unintentionally fell into marketing, I guess, when I realized that neither of those two things was probably going to be the path I took.
Wait, quick sidebar before we follow the journey of falling into marketing. Why do you need a law degree to be a sports agent?
I think a lot of it is like contract law review and stuff like that. And so, interestingly, when I decided to go back and do higher education in the UK, I found a course that was essentially sports studies and business, right? And I thought, well, this is great. This is going to align perfectly to kind of, my aspirations to get into this world. And I realized very quickly that 90% of the people in the course wanted to be physiotherapists or phys ed teachers or coaches. And so I was very much in the minority. And I can remember thinking, that's odd. And I talked to the professor at the time, and he said, yeah, you need a law degree to do that, and you don't really have the grades to do that right now, my friend. And so stuck with that instead. But would have been nice, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how did we fall? Oh, go ahead, Chelsea.
Oh, I was just going to, reiterate, like most of their job is negotiating contracts, but it's not too late for you. Obviously we don't want you to leave Arctic Wolf, but all players also have marketing agents. So maybe there's a future for you still.
There you go.
If you wanted to be a sports marketing agent.
I'll call my friend Alina after this and see if she's
No. I mean, like many, many years down the road. Yeah. Many years. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so how did we fall into marketing?
Finished school, didn't really have a plan, decided to bypass kind of that piece of the last year of education and decided to have some fun and bypass kind of what do you do next. Decided at that point that it's very common in the UK that to sort of take a year off between finishing sort of mandatory education and starting secondary education to go travel and see some of the world. But decided I wasn't ready for that at that point. So finished school and sort of decided I was going to go traveling and needed kind of temporary work to kind of make some money to get myself kind of set off. And so took a job at a business I'm sure everybody will know, a company called Sophos in the UK. They were headquartered just down the road from where I was. Didn't really care about what department it was in, was more focused on how do I get some sort of sustainable work and make some money here. And got placed in the marketing department, which was a really interesting kind of start to my professional career. I mean, I'm going to date myself here, guys, but part of my first job was still at the point where you would send out updates, antivirus updates on physical like CDs to customers so they could update their laptops. And so for 1 week a month, I would go down to the storage room and I would literally pack CDs into individual envelopes, put them through a prepaid postage machine for all of our customers, put the sticky labels on and send the CDs out. So I did that for 1 week a month. And the rest of the time I got involved in kind of organizing the annual sales and marketing conference, did a bit of PR and some other stuff. And I was supposed to be there for 4 months. The 4 months flew by and ended up staying in the business for 9 years. And so really achieved the sort of the aspiration of traveling the world, but had a great experience there and sort of really fell in love with both the cross-functional nature of the work, like working with the sales team every day, the customer success team, the product team, really felt at like the intersection of kind of some of the things that were driving the business. And then secondly, I'm kind of a data guy. Like I've always been a data guy. And it was kind of at the point where marketing pivoted a little bit from like, here's some money, go do your thing, to here's some money, what have you done for me to help the business be successful? And so I got super involved in analytics and marketing funnels and understanding demand from kind of that perspective. And it just felt like a really good fit and a really interesting thing for me to work on, and I've stuck with it ever since.
Wow. So what were your roles, or like where did you start and where did you end over those 9 years at Sophos?
So I had a bunch of roles. Started as a very junior assistant working on organizing events and conferences and a bit of PR and some other stuff. Went over to Vancouver during that period. So went over to Vancouver, Sophos, met Chris Kraft was there at the time. So I've known Chris for a long time.
Okay.
Chris Weeds, who just joined us in the product org, I knew him from the UK. So I've known these guys a long time. And then I really got involved in like email marketing, analytics, performance, understanding like demand programs. So did a whole bunch of that for a long time. Like really sort of, I'd call it like back office, like operational marketing. It's really understanding like the plumbing of how marketing works and how you understand performance and how you talk about it to the rest of the business. And so did that for 7-8 years. Went back to the UK at that point and realized I hadn't done sort of any, I would guess it like front facing marketing work, sort of traditional field marketing work. And so took a job at a different organization doing that. So pivoted from kind of like the plumbing and the infrastructure of marketing and how to make that work to more sales, customer success, channel facing roles within a kind of field organization in Europe.
Wow. So you never took the gap year, but you got your Sophos role, took you all over the world, it sounds like.
I've been very fortunate, in all of my roles, I've been very fortunate to spend a lot of time in a lot of different places, learning about businesses, learning about, how to operate in those markets, learning about the cultural nuances. So Sophos, I think, was probably the majority of the time was Europe, North America. It was really when I got to Rapid7 that I started to get kind of more international exposure as that business was growing, and spent a lot of time in Asia, a lot of time in kind of, the Middle East and those places, learning how to kind of build those businesses and understand kind of how they operated. But I've been very fortunate to have had the opportunity to go to a lot of cool places and enjoy those places, but also hopefully, have a positive impact on the business as well.
Yeah, that is amazing. I love that for you. I'm really jealous of like the European gap year culture and just the more open hand with like work-life balance and working to live versus living to work. Is that the right phrase? But it's cool that I feel like a lot of successful people we have on the podcast, it always seems like they weren't necessarily planning. It wasn't like I am going to be a CEO, but following their interest, and it's just cool how life works out the way it should when you follow what you want to do versus maybe what you should do. I don't know if that's
I mean, I think about it, and I get asked this question a decent amount, right? It's just like, what is your career path? Like, how did you get to where you got to? What decisions did you make? The one thing that I always say to people is, ultimately, when you're thinking about opportunities or you're thinking about what do you want to do, if you sort of visually depict a triangle, right? And at the 3 points of the triangle, you've got kind of compensation and your earnings. And then the other corners, you've got sort of status, right? Like what's your title? How big's your team? And in the other corner, you've got learning. I've always tried to make every decision based on learning and my ability to learn stuff, and really tried to focus on my decisions on what's going to help me get furthest into that corner. Because my assumption has been that if you do that well, then the other two kind of naturally follow, right? Versus, they don't drive the learning piece. The learning piece drives them. And so, I guess I didn't sort of have that framework of how to think about it as I've made decisions during my career. But as I look back at it now and kind of apply that framework to it, I've sort of unintentionally made all of the decisions based on what's going to give me the most opportunity to learn things and experience new things. And that's kind of driven, I guess, the other parts of the triangle.
Yeah, I love that. That's such great advice.
Yeah, I do.
I have my moments occasionally where it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're almost a year in.
Yeah.
At Arctic Wolf here. What's the biggest thing you've learned?
What is the biggest thing I've learned? That's a great question.
What are you learning?
Yeah,
what are
I
you
mean, so I think that the biggest things I've learned are, let me reframe it for you a different way. When I always think about sort of, an opportunity or what do I do next, I try to pivot around kind of three areas again, right? The first is kind of, organizational culture, right? That means a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? For some people in their career, that can mean, how great are the holiday parties, or how much, fun can I have in the environment, right? For me, it was about, the example the leadership team sets, the openness to new ideas, the willingness to collaborate on things, and the desire to really think about, like, how do we build this as a team sport, right? So I would say, first year learnings have been, all of those things have proved out to be incredibly true, right? I'm very fortunate. I've got phenomenal partnerships with Will on the channel side, Matt on the sales side, and sometimes, they can be sort of high friction relationships, right, between sales leaders and marketing leaders about, who's got the ball when, and who's responsible for either the good or mostly, when things aren't working. But I found it to be an incredibly supportive, collaborative group that kind of want to make progress and move things forward together. So that's been great. The second thing I always sort of think about is the business really solving a customer's problem? And that's kind of a proxy for, like, what is the growth potential of the business, right? But when you think about, and I know we'll talk about this in a bit, but when you think about, the challenges that our customers are facing today, the unique way that we're solving them for our customers, and the ways that we are able to solve them to help them make progress in their cybersecurity journey, we're doing a lot of things that are very unique in the industry, some of which are very visible right now, some of which I think are probably coming. But I thought that was a real differentiator in the sense of, we're really solving customers' problems every day. And then the third thing I always sort of think about is, like, is it somewhere where I can go and have an impact and positively impact the business, right? And so, for me, having spent half my life in the US, half my life outside of the US, I got a pretty good understanding of kind of how to scale and build these businesses internationally. I've also done kind of a good chunk of the growth journey that we're on right now. And we talk a lot about sort of what does the next phase of growth look like for Arctic Wolf. And so I'd seen a lot of that. And so I thought for me, like, those three things really aligned well. And I would say a lot of it has proved to be true in the 9 months I've been here, right? We are transforming in a lot of ways to kind of set ourselves up for that kind of next sort of phase of what Arctic Wolf looks like. A lot of expansion, a lot of new opportunity. And I think really, the thing that I've learned the most, which is a really healthy place to be in, and maybe you guys have had this experience in your professional careers, but I've certainly, been in situations or roles or times in organizations where I've really thought, like, do we really have a big opportunity ahead of us here? And, like, that's not a great sort of situation to be in, right? I think for us, we have all the opportunity and all the runway ahead of us. Our challenge is going to be, how do we execute on that well, and how do we prioritize the things that are going to be most impactful? And that is a much better situation to be in than waking up every day really thinking about, are we solving customers' problems effectively, and do we have opportunity ahead of us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like you're for sure a marketing leader, because you've got the triangle, the 3 points, like, you've got the visuals, the talking points for us, but it's so good. I love it. Well, you're in this role. Those are things you think about and what got you here. Give us, like, a peek into, like, what's a day in the life of.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'll preface it, guys, with I am certainly not the best marketeer in the world, and I'm certainly not the best marketeer on the team, which is a benefit, right? Because I say to the team a lot, I think if the expectations or the the belief is the ideas all come from kind of leadership, we're probably going to get some strange ideas, particularly if I'm involved every now and again. I would say most of my day, I was asked this a few weeks ago, most of my day is spent with sales and sales leadership, channel and channel leadership, really trying to understand what is going on in their businesses. What are they seeing? Same on the CS side, right? Because ultimately we're trying to drive not just acquisition revenue, we're trying to sell more into our existing customers and retain more of those dollars. So I think a good chunk of it is spent kind of understanding the perspective from the teams that are actually out there every day in the field on the sales, CS, and channel side, sort of trying to decipher what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. So I suppose a third of the day is that. I'd say a third of the day is really with the leaders on my team and the wider marketing team, trying to understand how do we connect what we're hearing from different parts of the business to where we can make an impact and we can positively, help grow the business and support the business. And then a third of the day is with the greatest of respect to some of the teams, probably the more unglamorous kind of like keep the ship moving in the right direction stuff. So a lot of time with finance, a lot of time with G&A, with biz apps, and kind of those teams around like how do we move some of these areas forward so we're predictable in what we're doing, and we're consistent in what we're doing, and we're kind of making progress in the areas that are going to set us up for the future. And so I try to broadly split my time, sort of a third what is happening today, a third how do we correlate that into actionable information for the team, and then a third sort of, okay, what are we doing we need to make progress on in the next 6 to 12 months to really set us up to be successful.
Mm-hmm. I know when you joined Arctic Wolf, a big change internally was the SDR, so our demand gen, our sales development representatives, moving from reporting into sales to reporting into you through marketing. Are you able to give us like a peek behind the curtain into the strategy behind that and how that's playing out throughout your first year here?
Yeah, for sure. So love the SDR team. I've been very fortunate to have the SDR team as part of pretty much all the teams I've been in at different organizations. Tried to be an SDR for a week, failed miserably, and have no desire to go back and do it again. So I give them a ton of credit because it is a hard grind. I think there's more stuff coming over the next couple of months as we think about the SDR team. But I would say being able to create that kind of loop between the marketing dollars that we're putting into market and then really getting the actionable feedback from the SDRs on like what is working and what isn't working and what do they need more of and where do they need less, has been hugely impactful. I mean, ultimately the program serves kind of a dual purpose, right? And this is what we talk about as a leadership team in terms of like how are we progressing against these things. The first is, how do we drive, real quality pipeline for our sales organization? And that's definitely a work in progress, right? We are on this journey from how do we transition sort of this volume-based world to more of a quality-based world and getting our sellers quality at bats. And so we spend a lot of time, thinking about and executing against how we doing that effectively, both from the programs that we're running to what are we asking the SDRs to do and what are we enabling them on and how are we helping them be successful. So that's kind of a big piece of it. And then I would say that the second big thing is, the second big pillar is how do we prepare them for whatever is next in their professional careers, right? Now, ideally, you'd love to see as many of them go into the acquisition sales business as possible, right? Because there's a natural connection between those two areas. But also, this is a business that is very good at creating opportunities across PDR roles and CSM roles in different parts of the organization. And so, we have a ask of the team that they help us build that qualified pipeline, right, and really drive that acquisition business. The payback, I guess, is giving them the skill set and the experience and the access to learning and coaching and development that sets them up well for whatever they decide to do next. We had a goal, or we will have a goal in the program moving forward. I had this in my prior role where we looked at the number of SDRs who were still in the business 12 months after they'd left the SDR program and been successful. And it was one of the areas in my prior role that we identified like we weren't having a lot of success. And we're going to start to do the same here. And really, ultimately, as we said, we're bringing these individuals in, we're investing in them it's our goal for them to be successful long term in whatever they want to do. And so you'll start to see more from us, I can think, over the next quarter in terms of how we're doing that, how we setting them up to be successful, and ultimately, how do we help them have really long, successful careers at Arctic Wolf?
I love that. And I
Yeah.
think it's such a hard job too, that having those really clear pathways, I think is really motivating. And I could imagine helps with, while it is a hard job, knowing like I am getting these opportunities and it's leading somewhere. So I think it's cool you're investing.
I also think a lot of folks come into the program with the expectation or the aspiration to be in sales, right? To be in acquisition sales. But as you guys highlighted, it's a tough gig, right? It's on the phone every day, trying to build your own pipeline, trying to build your own demand. And so I do think a large part of it is giving individuals exposure to different areas and helping them see different parts of the business that might fit for them. Because ultimately, as I said, really, we want to be driving as many people into acquisition sales as possible. That's kind of the natural path for that role and that team. But we also want to retain great people regardless of kind of what they want to do next. And so we have a responsibility to give them exposure to those different areas of the business so they can, best determine for themselves where they can have the biggest impact.
Love. Well, I know we just talked about the SDRs moving under you. That was a change that happened for us here at Arctic Wolf. So kind of along that same thought process, what's one growth experiment that has surprised you, whether it because it really worked or it didn't work? And it can be like at any point throughout your career.
Oh, I've had a few. I'm trying to think of a good one that's tangible. I'll give you one that's recent. And I don't know whether it fits the sort of the true definition of experiment, but I'd say it's one of the things that's been really interesting to uncover that I think has helped us kind of form a perspective on how we move forward. So we have a program on the marketing side that has an interesting side of sort of reputation internally, right? Some folks love it, some folks are not so keen on it. One of the things that we learned is if we actually went and dug into the data and identified kind of who was that program working with, the types of accounts, the profile of those accounts, what they look like, the individuals in those accounts, we were actually able to really start to delineate between where that program was having impact versus where it wasn't. And so that's the type of growth experiment I think is really meaningful, because actually we were able to go back to the business and say, hey, this program has this perception today. Here's actually where it's working and where we want to do more of it. And here's where it isn't working as effectively. And we're either going to stop that or we're going to do less of it, right? And I think those types of activities build credibility with your partners across the business, because they're data backed and they're actually focused on the things that matter the most. And they're also good for us to go through that kind of learning experience and understand, hey, maybe this did work great previously, maybe it's not as effective now. What can we sort of be inquisitive about and understand how to make it more effective? We've got a bunch of really interesting stuff going on the digital side right now, with Kyle Ratke and the digital team, who are doing a phenomenal job. We've dialed up a lot of our sort of target account digital spend. We've seen some phenomenal results in places like Canada as we've dialed in on the Greater Toronto area and getting impressions and visibility there. And so there's all these experiments kind of happening all of the time. I think, what we're really focused on is how do we amplify the ones that are working most effectively? And how do we, equally importantly, is like give context to the business on the why behind those, right? It's challenging sometimes when you live in the marketing world, because there can occasionally be the assumption that everything works perfectly. The reality is, as you guys know in your world, right? In my world, not everything works perfectly. And so really we've got to create space for the team where they can test and learn, but they can do that quickly. And we can also understand whether it's worked or not and course correct appropriately, right? And so I think the team have really embraced that over the last 9 months. We've definitely made progress. There's still things that we want to try, we want to test. We're starting to do more things with AI and understand kind of how that can impact the business. But there's a high level of natural inquisitiveness in the team to do those things that I really appreciate and enjoy seeing.
I always love talking to individuals in marketing, because I feel like growing up, we're kind of taught marketing as like this it's like just for creatives, or like it's
Right.
kind of tied to advertising sometimes. And then like you actually talk to marketing professionals and it's like really data driven and analytical. And not that it's a binary, like you can be creative and both, but it's always just so fun like hearing the marketing brain.
I mean, certainly the world that the revenue and growth team live in, like I sort of articulated to people, like we're kind of like wealth management for Arctic Wolf, right? We're given a pot of money, and then we have to go invest that money in things that we think are going to give us the best return in revenue. And I'm sure you guys have done this, but when you go through your kind of 401 elections or whatever it is, and you've got the box that says, do you want to invest in the high risk, the medium risk, or the low risk, right? And there's a bunch of stuff that we do that we know kind of works, and that's sort of the low risk bucket. And then there's a bunch of stuff that we've put more money into, and we've seen that sort of trend positively, but we don't know how far that kind of upward curve is going to be. And then you've got your high risk stuff, which is like, well, what we just don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to try it and we're going to see what happens. And the real kind of, that's where the art meets the science, right? In the plans and the teams is, how do we balance those three things accordingly so we have enough of the known, we've got some things that we think are going to help us in the future, and then we've got a bunch of stuff that we're trying that could fail, right? And generally where you get out of whack is the balance between those three things isn't right. You either rely too much on the things that and then they start to degrade over time, or you're too over invested in the things that you just haven't proven out yet. And so finding that right mix is really the art and the science that we're asking the teams to do.
What about, I'm curious about this psychological safety. I feel like your team has to have a lot of it to encourage the pursuit of failure, but then also like, we're going to flag it and move on real quick. What does that look like for you to foster that environment where you're encouraging people to take those risks and then quickly be like, it didn't work, and move on?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to two things, Mary. Or the first is I try and I encourage all of the leaders on the team to be very vulnerable. And what I mean by that is, like, we don't necessarily have all the answers right now, or know all the answers, and we try to be extremely transparent with the team about when those things are happening, right? Because I think if people see willingness from leadership to be vulnerable, I think that there is a higher likelihood that they're willing to be vulnerable themselves, right? I think that's kind of the first thing. The second thing I would say is, it is an expectation on the team that we are trying things and we are failing, because to me it means that we're trying to do things differently, and we're thinking about things differently, and there's no penalty for failing, I guess, as long as we fail quick and we learn from it and we understand why we failed, because then we can do something differently. But I completely kind of acknowledge the point that can sometimes be an uncomfortable world for folks to live in, and you really have to kind of exhibit that and drive it forward. The third thing I'd say is, and I talk to the team about this a lot, and I'm sure if they were with us right now, they'd probably be like, oh, this is another one of his stock phrases that he rolls out, every now and again, because I've got a few. But the third thing I say to the leaders a lot is, my job, or the biggest thing I can do to help the team is give the team the space to play the game the right way. Very, very early in my career, I went in to do a presentation to a bunch of senior executives in the business about marketing performance. And I was like dialed in. I had all of my numbers and all of my data and kind of everything ready to go. Started, and about 90 seconds into the presentation, that one of the senior leaders in the business said, we can all read the slides. Like, we understand the numbers. I said, what we really care about is, like, are we playing the game the right way? The scoreboard is going to be what the scoreboard is going to be. That's going to kind of take care of itself. But are we playing the game the right way? And so the biggest thing I try to do is give the team the space to play the game the right way, and allow me and the other leaders to worry about the scoreboard. Because if we're playing the game the right way, then in reality, the scoreboard will kind of take care of itself over time, right? That's at least my thesis with this. And you don't want the teams that are, trying to experiment and try to do the work worried too much about the scoreboard, because that can be inhibiting in making decisions or testing and learning or trying new things.
But how do you know you're playing the game the right way?
Well, that's
the scoreboard will reflect that, but don't focus on it too much.
Kelsey. That's a fair question to ask, right? And I think it's somewhat subjective. I would say really, are the teams executing together as one team, right? Are we aligned in that motion? Are we testing and learning new things? And are we constantly challenging ourselves to look at what have we done previously? Is it still as effective? And do we need to do things differently? Right. I think it is subjective, and there are definitely times where, the pressure on the scoreboard or the desire to make the scoreboard better can, inhibit some of that occasionally, and you've got to kind of walk that line a bit. But ultimately, yeah, I think if your belief is that you're doing the right things and you're testing the right things and you're challenging yourself and those around you to think about things differently, then the hope is, or the belief would be, that the scoreboard will reflect that at some point, and you don't want to lose the spirit of doing that.
Are there any tells, clear things where you're like, we are playing the game the wrong way?
Well, that's a bold question. I mean, look, I think as my sort of my big observation on that, Mary, would be as the business has grown and evolved, and I'll preface this with, like, this is a completely natural thing for the business to be going through, and actually is a good thing, right? Is it's evolved from a sort of, small group of regions, or a singular region and a singular product, to now a multiple region, multiple geography, multiple offering portfolio type of business, right? With different routes to market. And so I wouldn't say it's like playing the game the wrong way, but I think, coming into the business, what I've really tried to emphasize with the teams, and really tried to, like, unpack and understand, and it's taken us a while to get there, is how each of those things are behaving and how they're behaving differently. So like, for example, our expectations on our distribution business may be higher in Europe than they are in North America, right? Because that's kind of the prevalent way of going to market in some of those territories. And so understanding that and unpacking that and trying to make the connection between the money you're putting into that and the output that you're getting has been kind of a big area of focus. And we're just more nuanced than we were because of those variables, right? I mean, it's like trying to make a chocolate chip cookie in every different geography or product that we're trying to serve. Ultimately you want to get to a chocolate chip cookie, but the recipe may be slightly different depending on, where you make it and how you do it, right? You might put a few more chocolate chips or a bit more butter, or do something differently. Ultimately, the outcome you're trying to get to is the same, but I think the big thing that we've spent a lot of time unpacking is, how are these different dynamics behaving in these different markets and segments? And then how do we put investment and marketing plans into the things that we think are going to work the best? Some of those things have worked. Some of those things that we tried in Q2 did not work as effectively, but you learn from it, and we know now. I think we have a much better understanding of how the business and the demand engine operates now than we did 3 months ago, and we know more than we did 6 months ago, and that's good progress to me.
Tell us about your leadership style, and maybe some things you learned along your journey, or some advice that stuck out with you over the years.
Yeah, so I would say, that there's a couple of things that I sort of, I spend most of my time thinking about, I guess. And the first is, like, how we're playing the game and whether we're doing it the right way. The second, and probably the best piece of advice I got as I progressed through my career, which I have to ask myself 3 or 4 times a day, right? Because I think it's just a good check and balance for me, is the first experience I had of kind of managing a team of more than 20 people. I was very comfortable being in the weeds with the team, doing the work day to day, and sort of operating in kind of my previous sort of natural sort of habitat. And I had a senior leader come to me once, and they said, "I'm going to give you the best piece of advice I was ever given, and I want you to really think about it every day." And what they said to me was, how much of your day is spent doing work that you are uniquely qualified to do? You are the only person on your team that can do that work. And if it's less than 80%, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing your team a disservice, because you're not allowing them to do meaningful work either. And so I'm not always the best at holding that line, but it's one of the things I check myself on constantly, is like, am I doing things that I'm uniquely qualified to do? Or am I inhibiting other team members' opportunity to grow or take on more meaningful work for themselves, because I'm sort of doing things that they are more than capable of driving. And so I say like that one sticks with me a lot, and I would say, style or ethos is, a couple of things. One is, I think we're really, really, really keen and really focused on, how do we give the teams the ability to feel like they have accountability, feel like they're trusted to own those decisions, and feel like they are supported to make those decisions that are appropriate for their businesses, right? And so, we talk about sort of shared accountability a lot. I think that's probably the first thing. And then the second thing is really trying to build this, cultural or belief system around, we win together, right? So, we talk a lot about sort of individual successes and examples where, individuals or teams have had a ton of success. Really, like, it's a team sport, and it should be a team sport. And that's not just within my department or the marketing team. It's really within the revenue organization, right? One of the, the oddest experiences I ever had that was a real learning moment for me was a couple of organizations ago. I went to a QBR, and the marketing team got up and presented all of these things around, how phenomenal performance the marketing engine had delivered, in the last quarter, and how, everything was green and smashing it and perfect. And the sales leader got up and presented that they hit 50% of the number. And I promised myself leaving the room that we would never get into this situation again. And that, we win as one team, we lose as one team, but we do it together. And so really trying to drive that thought process, that behavior, and that accountability, not just to ourselves, but to the wider revenue engine, I think is a key component of a successful team as well.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like you're touching on so many of our culture tenets in being stronger together, and so many things like innovating to advance and owning the outcome. But I love hearing you just talk about winning as one team and collaborating across all these different departments to find success together.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when it's successful, right, it's, as I said, you can have that sort of healthy level of friction between, the sales, the customer success team, and the marketing team. And sometimes that's good, right? Sometimes that provokes different thinking or different perspective. But ultimately, we're all working towards the same number. We're all working towards the same outcome. And, I don't have many sort of pet peeves in the world, but I think, again, if the team would say, one of the things I'm pretty militant about is, we got to talk the same language as the rest of the organization, right? There are things that are very important in the marketing world that we should care about, that we should work towards, how effective our digital programs are, how effective our email programs are, how we're doing in our field events. But ultimately, when we talk to the rest of the business, we're talking about what is our impact on revenue and what is our impact on pipeline, because that's what they care about. So we really focus time and effort trying to understand that and trying to really determine what is impacting those things, because that means that we're in the boat together with those teams. And it really is a partnership at that point around how do we get to the outcome, which is essentially growing the revenue for the business.
Wow. Well, I don't have a question, but I did just want to share that I loved the philosophy around reflecting if more than 80% of my day I'm doing things that I am not uniquely qualified to do, then, maybe I need to take a step back. I've just never heard it articulated in that way. I really liked that. So shout out to whoever you heard that from.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that really was, it was very provocative at the time because I lied to myself for a while and was like, no, I really am. And then actually, when I really sort of deciphered what the message was underneath, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this particularly effectively.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I definitely was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, we got to flag this part of the podcast because this needs to be we like to clip a little short that we also share. And I'm like, that has to be the short so we can pass the nugget of leadership.
There you go. Good marketing for the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Exactly. Alina, after we had Alina on the podcast, she has us thinking about all new ways to market this podcast. So
there you go. Yeah. Well, listen, I can probably help you figure out whether the numbers and the downloads and the other stuff. But she's the brains behind the real creative idea. I definitely defer to her on that.
Well, before we get to our rapid fire, our final fun questions,
Yeah.
we always do like to talk about mental health and
Yeah.
well-being, just quickly. So if you could just share a little bit, what does well-being look like for you? Like how do you live that out? And then how do you also model that for your team and support the well-being of your team as well?
Yeah, I mean, um, this is one that that balance between work and non-work, right? I definitely, it's definitely a work in progress for me, right? I enjoy the work. I think that's the first thing, and so I probably dedicate myself to it, an unreasonable amount of the time in certain situations or certain occasions. I would say there's probably a couple of things that I've learned over my career that are probably the most meaningful to me. One is, I think particularly I learned this during COVID is this sort of traditional sort of day working period, right? That and particularly being a remote employee, I found that actually like breaking my day up into different chunks and giving myself some space and time during the day just to do kind of little resets or rethinks on things is super meaningful to me. And so like I'm a night person, so I'm actually probably at my most productive between about 8:30 and 10 in the evening. So that's when I kind of try to do a lot of my sort of thinking and planning and try to figure out kind of stuff. And so that's just a balance that works for me, right? I'm less productive in the morning. And so, I think I've learned that like finding a schedule that works for me as much as possible that doesn't impact what I need to do with other people within the organization has probably been a big thing for me. And then the second is, and like it's gonna sound a little cliched, is like trying to have some perspective on the criticality of like what we're doing. I was again, when I think about like people that I've worked for and with that have really shaped my perspective on stuff, I used to get frustrated when things weren't either perfect or things weren't going as quickly as possible. And I remember one of my bosses at the time said to me, he said, "You're not saving people's lives, man. Like, it's not like you're out there, flying a air ambulance or you're a surgeon or something like that, right? Like, get some
Mm-hmm.
perspective, clear your head, and kind of just rethink, the criticality of some of this stuff." And so, I would say, when we all have these moments where, things can feel a little bit overwhelming, or you're trying to figure out which one of these 15 things that we need to make progress on do I do first. And again, it's a little cliched, but it's a good grounding thing for me to just reset myself and really think about, okay, well, like, what is the problem at hand, and I'm not saving people's lives over here, right? So that's always a good point. And then I think for the team, it's again giving them space to find the right motions that work for them. I will say, and I think just being very transparent about it, right? So as I said, like, my most productive time period of the day is probably in the early evening, right, or mid evening. But I'm very clear with the team that if they hear from me at that point, or they see emails, or they see me adding comments in documents, that is not an expectation that they're then needing to reply to them or action them or do something, right? So I think that's a large part of it as well. And then I think encouraging people to take vacations, to be transparent about where they are. We had an individual on the team a couple of weeks ago that was dealing with some issues that were family related. That needs to be the priority, right? We shouldn't be living in an environment or a team where, if one person needs some time to resolve some things in their life, that the whole thing crumbles, right? And so I think being respectful of where people are at and making sure that they're comfortable being vulnerable and transparent about what they need, and then backing them when that happens is equally as important.
Clip it.
Yeah, building a strong team so there's no single points of failure and you can all rely on each other.
Yeah.
So much good stuff. This has been such a delightful conversation. I'm so excited for the pack, those that don't know you already, to get to know you better and to learn about a peek behind the curtain into your part of the org. Lots of leadership wisdom. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, no, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. It's lovely to connect with you both.
Okay, well, before we let you go, we have our rapid fire. So just first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Okay.
Best concert of your life.
Oh, that's an easy one. I'm not a big concert goer, but I saw Oasis in New Jersey last August for Labor Day weekend. Oasis were like the, you know, poster child when I was in my late teens or in my formative years, and so seeing those guys was by far and away the best concert I've ever had in my life. You know, I went very lucky. I went with my wife for the weekend, and she told me that it was better than the day we got married, and I was not disagreeing with her. Put it that way.
Wow, that does sound great answer.
Wow, I'm jealous. I didn't know they've toured.
Yeah,
still.
yeah. Well, they just about kept it together for the tour. To, you know, it's amazing, Chelsea, what you do when you need to make money quickly, right? How you tolerate things that maybe you wouldn't have tolerated before.
Those royalties off Wonderwall aren't cutting it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, favorite word.
I've got two. One is inquisitive, because I'm very naturally inquisitive myself, and I love being surrounded by people that have natural inquisitiveness as well. I just think that breeds such a great culture and such a great team, that's definitely a big one. And then my second one would be sequence, and that's really based on a board game that we play with my boys here, that we try to play, you know, a few times a week, which is, you know, go back to like the well-being piece. Like, that's my opportunity to sit and play a board game with my kids for an hour in the evening. And so sequence is a great board game and a ton of fun if anyone goes search it up on Amazon.
Okay, I have so many questions, but I know we're out of time. To me, sequence is such a Midwest thing, but maybe it's not.
Oh, the game?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give a shout out to my friend who got me on to sequence, who is born and raised, now lives in Boston, but is from Indianapolis.
Okay.
That is probably where that came from.
Yeah, because I only played sequence when I'd like visit my family in the Midwest.
Oh, it's great. Okay. Great. My kids love it. It's a ton of fun.
A place on your bucket list.
You know, I've been very fortunate. I've been to some amazing places. You know, I've always loved Tokyo. I had the opportunity to go to Ho Chi Minh City a few years ago, which was just awesome. It was the most fun I've ever had in a place. I have this kind of longing desire, and I used to think it was Bora Bora, and now I've just decided I don't mind, but I really want to go and get like one of those huts on stilts, you know, that like go out into the ocean with the little pool thing there, you know, like all of that going on. Where it's like
straight into the ocean.
Straight in, like no cell phone service, you know. What have you guys seen the movie Couples Retreat? Whatever it is, or the one with Jason Bateman and a bunch of the people. Anyway, there's a scene in there that's got like that type of vibe, you know, tiki hut into the water. Okay. I'm like, I need some of that action.
I mean, same. But they don't have bathrooms in there, do they?
Yes, no, they do. Chelsea, they're like you can get like luxury ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The outdoor shower and the skylights, you can see the stars.
Mary's great. That's the vibe I'm
and like the glass floors, so you can walk over and see the ocean.
Over the ocean? Yeah. I want that. And then conversely, I want like the ice dome, like the see-through dome in Iceland where you can like see the northern lights.
Oh, see, that'd be cool. See, I'm all for the people, you know, for the folks, you know, like they want to go on a vacation for, you know, education or experience. Like I'm all for that. That's phenomenal. I just want a cocktail and like one of those little hut things and just to lie there.
Okay. You want a vacation.
That's the vibe I'm going for.
Okay, last two. What's something that people often get wrong about you?
Ooh, good one. Probably that I'm a little more fiery than probably people think I am. So, you know, I try to be, you know, try to set the example or be sort of the calm, you know, the calm sort of leader in the choppy waters, right? But I, you know, playing a lot of sport growing up, I'm very competitive, like very, I mean, board game night in our house can get pretty wild. I'm very competitive, and so I think there's a little bit of like natural fieriness that comes with that competitive streak and that competitive nature that I definitely have to temper. Okay.
Do you know your zodiac sign?
I'm a Virgo.
Oh, okay.
So I'm Virgo, year of the monkey. That's my.
I'm also year of the monkey. Wow.
Probably not the same year, luckily for you, but same cycle.
Well, Tom, this has been so fun.
Yes.
Getting to know you even better. I'll see you. When will you be in Minnesota again?
Week today.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Yep. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks again so much for the podcast.
Yeah. Great to spend time with you both. Thank you.
Wow, another great episode in the books. Love chatting with Tom. He's always in the Minnesota office, so it's just, I've gotten a chance to know him, so I'm glad you finally.
Yeah, I've heard so much about him, so it was really nice to spend the time and get to know all about the things he's doing here.
Yes. Well, another reminder, it's Women's History Month. Happy Women's History Month this March. We've got lots of other things going on around the pack. It's Pi Day, St. Patrick's Day, Global Employee Appreciation Day. So make sure that you've read the Howler newsletter, you're in the Howler Slack channel to stay up to date on all of the fun things.
And if you're not part of the pack but want to join us on our mission to end cyber risk, you can find all our open positions at arcticwolf.com/careers. We hope this finds you well, and we'll chat with you all in April. Bye.
Bye, everyone.